Hey guys, and welcome back to the item database. So before you jump into it, you have to install the thing. So you have to go to your .minecraft saves, go to your save name, go to datapacks, and drag the zip into here. Leave it as a zip. I have it as a folder, but leave it as a zip. You don't need to mess with the datapack files. And then also go to your resource packs and drag it in here. Leave it as a zip again. And then you're good to go. As long as you come into the world, go to resource packs, equip this guy, and type /reload, and you'll be in the game. So the most important thing to note with the item database is that all items have an ID. It is not just a crafter. I know a lot of people focus on the crafter because it's very cool, but it doesn't work without the core functionality of the database where everything's an ID. And that is a very, 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 very important distinction to make. Everything has an ID. What do I mean by that? Okay, so if we go trigger, item DB menu, this will be off by default vanilla linker. So these are kind of the settings you can do. So you have custom item settings and you have recipe settings. We'll go over custom items today, and recipes we will go over in the next video. I guess you don't have to wait a day to watch it. In help, these videos will be linked here, as well as the link to the Discord, and you can always uninstall the pack, but we'll go over kind of how much of an uninstall you can even do, because that's kind of an important thing to note. So the other main functionality you have is doing /trigger item DB UI, which will bring up the UI barrel, which will allow you to interact with things. You will have nothing here but the structure void and a green stained glass. And this left side is a vertical slider, and this right side is static, and the middle just changes. So kind of the important thing with the item database is that everything has a number. What do I mean by that? Well, if I give myself a grass block, you will notice that there is nothing special about the grass block. That's because I don't have the linker on, but to the data pack, it still has a number. It just doesn't know it. So for now, it's just 0. It doesn't have a number. So if you don't turn on the vanilla linker, the pack will probably not work as the way you expect it to. If I put one of these grass blocks into the recipes tab and build a recipe with it, nothing will happen. That's because you don't have the linker turned on, but I made the linker a thing that you have to specifically toggle on because it is a very permanent change to your world. Not necessarily permanent, but at the very least it will impact a lot of things, and we'll go over what it impacts. So when you turn the vanilla linker on, anytime a player gets an item, or anytime a player opens from a variety of containers, we'll take a look at in a second here, then it will get new MBT tags. The MBT tags are the ID, which we talked about, and has ID, which lets me know that it has an ID, and the version number. So the ID is the number associated with that item, and in the item database, all vanilla items have an ID that is a negative number, starting with -1, going to negative whatever, however many items there are in the game. And custom items with MBT or whatever should be stored in the database and will have a number that starts with 1 and goes to however many items you add to the database. One thing to note is this version number. So when a new version of the Minecraft comes out, right, the entire game comes out, I will have to generate a new version of the item database pack, which will be a zip, and you just replace your current one and type reload, and it will actually update all of your vanilla items to be version number 18 with a new ID if necessary, which probably will occur. So we'll have fun when that happens, but I already planned for it, and it should be fine. Now, with the item database, you have these custom MBT values, and now you can use all your logic as follows. And that is why the recipes works. And we'll talk about how the recipes works. But if things did not have ID numbers, if andesite was not always -746, then it will be way harder to look for recipes because I would just have to go through an array of strings that have string comparisons, which if you are familiar with commands, it's very difficult to do string comparisons and very inefficient comparative to a bunch of scoreboard checks. Scoreboard checks are the most efficient thing in the game for the most part. Now, as for adding custom items, because this video is just talking about the database, I'm going to remove the tooltip so that it's easier to see. And you can see these custom items that I have. So what you can do with custom items, also you can feel free to break it or fly away. It will disappear on its own, the UI. It is kind of has a safety feature. Let's just say that for now. If you fly away from it, it will disappear. If you run slash function itemdb UI slash place inside of a command block, it will put a permanent one, such as this, which will not disappear when I fly away. That's just kind of a good side note to talk about. Anyways, so if I have a item in my database, it will get an ID. So we can look at the ID of this diamond sword. It's not necessarily the same as a default diamond sword. A default diamond sword will still have a default diamond sword's ID number, which is -329, but this one has 2, and I would assume that you might have some other things. You can also see the version number is an integer, and it's a different number. It's not 17B, it's 14, and we'll go over that in a second. So I have this diamond sword, and I put this diamond sword, nope, not exactly. I will put this diamond sword into the chest. Okay, so the diamond sword is in the chest, and you may have wondered, why did that say super boots? There is a reason for it, and we'll talk about it in a second, but it has to do with how the pack works. So here's the diamond sword. I am going to put a chainmail chest plate because I'm thinking, well, I don't think that whatever I used this diamond sword for, maybe it was a recipe, maybe it was like loot or something, I don't think that it should be a diamond sword. It should be a chainmail chest plate. Okay, so as soon as I do that, I will get a copy of the diamond sword, aka the previous one that we just got done using, and anywhere else besides in my hand and my clicker, the diamond sword with the ID of 2 will update to the newest version. So if I go in this chest, now it's a chainmail chest plate. Okay, that's kind of an important thing to note, that behavior. Some other important behavior is the way that it merges things. So I'm going to give this diamond sword Frostwalker, and I'm going to put it in this chest plate, and then I'm going to reopen it. The chainmail chest plate will still have Frostwalker. Interesting, but that's kind of the way that I decided to do it. So if you want to update a item in the database, you need to update everything that you intend to update. It will not overwrite things. It does a merge, so it will not overwrite things in the newer version from the older version if the newer version does not specify it. So for example, if you make a weapon that has a custom MBT tag, but then you want to update the weapon and it does not have the custom MBT tag, all current weapons in the game that get updated will still have the old MBT tag. And that's kind of it's kind of bad, but it's also good, because then if you update something in the database which players have gotten in survival and changed the name of and added default enchants to or something, then it won't lose those. And also, if you update it and maybe you have some other systems that change those MBT tags from the default, like some kind of enchanting system, custom enchants, you won't lose those custom enchants, which is good. Now, as for adding new items, well, that's very simple. Just click on the green lime glass with an item, and it'll add it and move the lime glass over, and it will get the new ID. Keep in mind that you have to click on this to get a copy of the item. You just click on the item, it'll give you a copy, and this one will have the IDs, and you can use it in other places in the pack, such as here. So, for example, the proper way to do this, and I will go through a series of steps here, I'm going to take this and I'm going to change the power crystal. If I go to recipes, it will change where the power crystal is, but I should not technically put this power crystal here. It will delete the item and go back to the diamond sword. So I need to change it here, and it will change it here, just like that. These things didn't change because they are actually just vanilla items with the vanilla item tags. Now, if you do not have the vanilla linker on because you're in a situation where you aren't in survival and you don't have those custom MBT tags and you don't need the vanilla linker, if you don't need the vanilla linker, don't use the vanilla linker. That's just kind of my tip, because it is an additional amount of commands doing additional things. And if you are in a custom situation where items are given to the player strictly by the game, some kind of a server, and they don't have container access, then you should not use the linker because it's additional load, but you can still obtain the items as they should be from this tab up here called vanilla IDs. So if you click on these things on the left bar, it's tabs. And if I click on this, it moves the tabs down so I can see another tab. This will just be a way for you to access the vanilla IDs without having the linker on. So if I go F3H, this has the So that's pretty much everything with the ID linker. The other thing to note is how to move and save files. So if I go to custom items, it has these import, export, and clear functionality. So if I go into the world, I go into data, I have data storage item DB, command storage item DB. This will store all of the stuff related to the item database. You can take this, you can save it to make a a backup, you can save it somewhere else and then drag it in and replace it if you want to go back, revert. But if you want to kind of merge things, but only some things. So let's say I want to keep the recipes in my other world, but I want to have all the items from this world. I want to just change all the items in the other world to these items. What I can do is I can export the items. So that's right here. I can click export items. Yes, export. And that moves it into the file called itemdb buffered, which it tells you right here. And in this file, there will be stuff that I can then drag to another world and import. So we'll go through an example there, but let's just export and then let's clear the database. So this clears the database. So when I click on this, everything's gone. Then I can import and it will import it from the buffer. And now our database is back. But I can also move it between worlds. So I can copy the buffer. I can go to my saves. I can go to my command stuff 17. I can go into data and I can delete the buffer that's there. And you don't have to worry about deleting buffers because they're just temporary storage, but don't delete the one that isn't the buffer. That's important storage. So then if I jump into here, oh, okay, let me put that back. Okay, so then if I go trigger menu, then I go to custom items and then I click import and I click yes, then now we will have the items from the other world. Except this has a water bottle here. There is some bugginess with import, so you can just do it again and it may update, but it really just depends. I think the reason that it's different is I'll look into it, but for the most part it did copy correctly, but it just turned that gold helmet into a water bottle for some reason, which is kind of funny, but I'll look into that. Anyways, so this is a super flat world and we can actually look at the efficiency of the system without the crafter. We will look into the crafter and its efficiency on its own. So this world has the vanilla linker running and you can see the efficiency. It's pretty good. I only see these little tiny blips, right? It's not good to look at the efficiency compared to a survival world because there's a lot of other things going on. This world doesn't have a lot of things going on. So probably the worst case scenario is if your entire inventory fills up with items that do not have vanilla tags, and this is the worst case scenario for the linker. So I do that. And I did see a red spike, but it's kind of inconsistent and it mainly has to do with how many times you've been in this world. So if I just do it again, you won't see a huge red spike. You'll see kind of an orange spike. That's kind of a more typical value, but it only happens for one of the ticks in which you update the items. And then other than that, you're totally fine. And if I add just one new item, you can see the efficiency load of that. I really can't even tell where it occurred when I added one item or a stacked item. I really can't tell where that even occurred. So it's more having to do with quantity. Now, as for the linker and the versioner, they all operate on all of these containers, which was kind of a pain to implement. So it operates on this container. Of course, it's not going to properly update because I got rid of the previous items in the database that I was using to test. So all these things have IDs that are not filled up yet, so it will not be able to operate. But essentially, it will operate on barrels when you open them, shulker boxes, double chests, all these UIs, including donkeys. The linker will also update items inside donkeys, so they will get the tags too. And then also they will operate on villagers, so they will get the tags as well, just like that. And you can kind of see something's changed just because some of the trades got swapped around, but I can go ahead and refresh his trades to be the proper trades. And it works on both vanilla and custom items in terms of updating the versioner. So I can wait a second. And here's the versioner. And it will get custom MBT added to it, but you have to right click on them twice because it activates when you right click on them, and Minecraft's UI does not update until you open it again. So that's just kind of a side thing to note. It also works on their inventory, so the things they're holding in their hand. So if I click this, it will have the things that they're holding in their hand with the custom MBT. So yeah, I thought I got everything, but I didn't get quite everything. So there could be some holes, and I mainly suggest only implementing these kind of packs on worlds where this is kind of like the first thing added, because there could be some holes. But worst case scenario, at least for vanilla items, is that the thing that they're looking at does not have the MBT, correct MBT, but when they grab it, it does get the correct MBT. So that's the worst case scenario. For example, let's say this chest has let's say the chest has, oh, I can't really put something in it that has no MBT. But if the chest has some items in it that do not have MBT, they won't stack with the items in my inventory. But once I put it somewhere in my inventory, they'll get the MBT and then they'll be able to stack. So that's kind of worst case scenario, but it doesn't happen often because of all of these conditions I added here. And the same is true with the versioner. Anyways, that just about concludes everything I wanted to say about the item DB in terms of the core and how the databasing works. Essentially, it assigns numbers to items, and those numbers can be changed, but they roughly control what happens in terms of recipes. And when you add an item to a database, you can control its version by just changing the item. And anywhere you see that item in other locations will be updated to the newest version of the item. And it will merge so that certain MBT will remain if it's not overwritten. And in terms of efficiency, the pack is quite efficient. At least the item database side is pretty efficient, but at the same time, it can get a little bit bad when you're accessing a bunch of things that need to be updated in terms of getting the new MBT. Other than that, if you guys thought this was helpful, please leave a like, consider subscribing if you like this series, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.